So good afternoon or good morning, depending on what time zone you're joining us from. We're delighted to have you with us for the 2021 American Horse Council Virtual Conference. I'm sorry we can't be together in person, but it's nice to see all of your smiling faces on our video screen. I'm Julie Broadway, President at the Council, and welcome to day 4 of our conference. This is our Equine Welfare Day. And this morning, the Equine Welfare Committee met, and this afternoon, we are delighted to have a presentation from the United Horse Coalition, the Equine Welfare Data Collective, and some very special guest speakers. So with that, I'm going to do some brief introductions of the 2 ladies that lead the United Horse Coalition. First, our staff liaison for this and the current director of the coalition is Ashley Harkins. Wave at them, Ashley. And Ashley's been the director since 2019. She has a Bachelor's of Science in Pre-Veterinary Science at the University of Vermont with a particular interest in equine science. Before coming to us, Ashley managed the Horse and Livestock Rehabilitation Program for the Animal Rescue League of Boston's Denham branch for 14 years, as well as serving as a local certified animal control officer, which included working with law enforcement cases involving neglect and abuse. So you can see Ashley is extremely well qualified for this role, and we are delighted to have her with us. She spends her free time with her 26-year-old gelding named Sammy, who was adopted from one of her neglect cases about 14 years ago. And Sammy, we often see pictures of him at staff meetings where he is teaching her youngest daughter to be a good equestrian. So we're excited to have Ashley with us. Her co-leader in this effort is the chair of the United Horse Coalition, which is Kristen Warner. Kristen is the senior counsel for the Jockey Club. In this role, she works with members of their legal team for their for-profit subsidiary companies and their not-for-profit organizations on a variety of legal issues. She's also involved with the Jockey Club's industry initiatives, which are related to welfare and safety of racehorses and aftercare, which includes the Equine Injury Database, the Thoroughbred Incentive Program, and the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance. She is a graduate of the University of Kentucky with a degree in political science and sociology, and from the University of Kentucky College of Law. She's a member of the Kentucky Bar Association, and she's involved with a number of different programs throughout the industry. So again, an extremely well qualified and capable leader for this program. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ashley and Kristen.
Well, thank you, Julie, for that send off to me. I will just kind of give a brief welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us today on the United Horse Coalition. It's still after, I think about 13 years or so of the Unwanted Horse Coalition. We changed the name, but it still is a little bit stuck in my brain. So I have to think a little bit sometimes and say United Horse Coalition. But it's been a great change, and Ashley has been a great addition. She's been, as Julie mentioned, the director since 2019. Her background in pre-vet and equine science and her work history with animal rescue, rehab, and law enforcement. Ashley's a great and fantastic advocate for the horse and for the UHC's mission. We've got a great agenda today. We're going to start with an update on the United Horse Coalition. Over the past year, the UHC has identified and provided some great resources to help owners and horse organizations during their time of need, not just through the pandemic, but at any time before, during, or after they have a horse ownership experience. Ashley's been working hard, particularly over the past year, so I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to her to tell us what's been going on with the UHC.
Sure. Well, thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Julie. And hello, everyone. Thanks for being here with us today for the UHC's 2021 virtual meeting. Hopefully, it will be our last virtual meeting, and I can see you all in person next year. I wanted this year's meeting, since it was virtual, to sort of serve 2 purposes. One, to give you updates on the UHC and EWDC, but also to use this as an opportunity to educate, which is a huge part of who UHC is. So to that end, we're going to be recording our session today and sharing it, as there's going to be some really good information presented today that not only our members can benefit from, but the general public as well. And I wanted to make sure that we are able to share that with everybody. This year, we've seen a pretty significant increase in owners reaching out for resources, mostly castration, veterinary assistance, and training assistance for horses that they've recently acquired, but weren't quite aware or prepared when they acquired the horse that they were going to need these things. Because of the increase in volume for assistance for these types of calls, we felt it would be a good opportunity for us to do something educational as part of this year's meeting, not only for UHC to be able to share with owners who look to us for assistance, but also for our members to be able to share with their own clients, you know, whether that their current or prospective owners looking into getting a horse. We're going to start today with me giving some UHC updates, followed by my colleague Emily Stearns, who will give EWDC updates. And then we will have Dr. Boswell here with us today, giving us some really great educational information about a lot of what owners need to be thinking about in advance and prepare for when they acquire a horse, no matter where they acquire it from. Whether that's purchasing, adopting, whether they inherit the horse, whether the horse is pulled from a bad situation of neglect or abuse, it doesn't matter. This information is something that everyone can benefit from. You know, I hope that if you're a horse owner or you're thinking about becoming a horse owner, we'll get you thinking about some of the things you might not be aware of on what it means to be a responsible owner, and help keep your own horse from becoming at risk. And if you're a rescue who's on the call with us today, you know, perhaps you'll get some great information on how to help horses coming into your facilities who have been neglected, or be able to share some of this information on being a responsible owner with your own current and prospective adopters. So for some of you, part of this discussion might be a little bit of a refresher because we just held a webinar on helping at-risk horses a couple of weeks ago. But as we are talking about at-risk horses and those in transition today, I like to reiterate what those terms mean for those who might not be aware. So at-risk being an equine that has an increased possibility of experiencing a situation of neglect, abuse, or general poor welfare. And when we talk about horses that are in transition, it's any equine that is currently in transition from one home, vocation, or owner to the next. So what does an at-risk horse look like? Well, looking at the pictures on this slide, I think naturally we automatically want to jump to the conclusion that Dakota on the slide here might look like the obvious choice, but in reality, all four of these horses were considered at risk. Many people have this misconception that an at-risk horse is old, or they're lame, or they're unattractive. Maybe they might be considered dangerous, or they're not an easy keeper. You know, maybe they have medical issues, or they've outlived the purpose for which the owner originally intended for the horse. And all of those can indeed be true. But, and I really want to emphasize this, more often than not, an at-risk horse can look perfectly normal and healthy and have no issues at all. For a majority of horses considered at risk, they're simply just a victim of a change in their owner's life circumstance. So whether that owner lost their job, or they're facing medical challenges, or they might be you know, aging out of their ability to properly care for the horse. Just to give you an example, I know Julie talked about him earlier, but this is a picture of my adopted horse, Sammy, who was once considered at risk and part of a large-scale neglect case in Massachusetts in 2005, which involved over 30 horses and 50 sheep. And I've owned 3 horses in my life. 2 I purchased through previous owners. and Sammy I adopted. And I might be biased, but he's absolutely my heart horse. And he's the best horse I've ever had the pleasure of being around. And he pretty much has the same effect on anyone who has had the joy of spending time with him. He's 26 now and semi-retired, and we basically he spends his time teaching my girls the wonders of being around horses. So since most of you today were most likely with us at last year's meeting and may have heard the webinar a couple of weeks ago, I don't want to spend too much time going into the history of UHC. It is all on our website. We've had a few changes over the past few years, but our mission was and continues to be to promote education and options for at-risk and transitioning equines throughout the industry by also promoting collaboration within the industry. And we do this by educating current and future horse owners on responsible ownership, proper care, responsible breeding, and the theme of the day is responsible, options that are available to owners should they no longer be able to care for their horse or if they need to rehome their horse. We're raising awareness about the issues that surround horses that are at risk and also the direct impact that it has on the horse industry itself, and hopefully reducing the number of horses at risk so that eventually, in a perfect world, we can eliminate the issues surrounding them altogether. There will always be horses at risk, so if we can continue to work together to find ways to keep these horses safe at home with their owners, it serves a twofold purpose by also keeping the equine industry itself strong. By far, however, our biggest impact in creating change, at least through UHC for at-risk horses, is by starting at the source of the problem, and that's through teaching horse owners how to be responsible for the horses in their care. And we do this by educating owners not only about responsible care and responsible breeding, but through providing resources on our website and options for them to help them keep their horse. Or if they can't keep their horse, we provide responsible options and alternatives for the next chapter of their horse's life. We also want to make sure that owners are continuously thinking about what happens to their horse if something were to happen to them as an owner. So to that end, we provide information regarding estate planning and having an exit strategy and or a safety net in place that keeps your horse safe. So in life, we set up a living will and trust and amend those often for our own family members. And setting up a plan for your horse should really be no different. And then the other, of course, the other side of that is helping owners understand and be comfortable with making end-of-life decisions for their horse, including euthanasia and disposal. It's important that this topic be discussed openly because it's something that horse owners at some point in their lifetime will most likely come across. And talking about this topic in an open and honest manner makes it less scary and a bit easier to understand what's involved in the process, both when it comes to euthanasia as well as disposal. We do want to make the subject a little less taboo and help them understand that euthanasia is just one part of being a responsible owner, and help owners become comfortable talking to their veterinarian about making that decision for their horse when and if it's necessary. So if you're part of transitioning horses from one home or owner to another, don't be afraid to bring this conversation up to new owners, or at the very least, point them in our direction for information so that we can help them be prepared. From a UH standpoint, prevention and being a responsible horse owner is key in helping to keep most of these horses from reaching an at-risk state, and thereby not only keeping them out of the system, but also safe in a home. So you hear us talk about resources and safety programs a lot. So for the context of UHC, a resource is basically anything that we can identify that could assist in helping horses at risk or preventing them from becoming at risk. There's currently 3 categories that these resources fall under. And these are all on our website. So each of these sort of buckets has its own page, a dedicated page on our website with these resources. So there's one for current owners, prospective owners, and we have a page set up for resources for rescues and sanctuaries as well. Sometimes, as is the case for resources for rescues and sanctuaries, we actually will direct users and visitors from our site using external links off of our webpage to resources and programs that are provided by our member organizations and partners. But basically, we just wanted to make sure that that information is there for everyone to utilize. So this brings me to our bread and butter, which is the United Horse Coalition's Equine Resource Database. Its direct impact is huge for its potential to help owners of at-risk horses. Individuals in need of assistance can come to our website, and what they can do is utilize this sort of, it's set up like a search engine to find various safety net programs or assistance programs listed by state that we've identified nationwide. This database also includes an audited list of over 1,200 rescues and sanctuaries for owners to reach out to in their search for responsible options should they need to rehome their horse. We add and remove resources from this database pretty much, I would say, on a weekly basis as they're identified or brought to our attention. As a side note, one of the action items for UHC this year coming out of our committee meetings was to identify some guidelines to help owners navigate searching for a reputable rescue to surrender to or adopt from. To give you an example, if an owner is in need of feed or hay assistance, or maybe it's euthanasia assistance, they would select that option from the drop-down box you saw previously, put in their state, and we will populate the results with any organizations we've identified that offer that type of assistance program. You can also search by breed-specific program or any affiliations, like say an organization is TAA or STA accredited, GFAS accredited, and so on. If you're an organization that's on the call with us today and you'd like to be added to this database, you're welcome to fill out the database questionnaire on our website and we will get you added. And I should also mention, if you're an owner on the call with us today and you're unable to find the assistance that you are in need of through the database, you can contact us directly and we will network with our member organizations to get you the help that you're in need of. The next slide, I'm going to mention our COVID site briefly, if only to say that it's going to be retired soon, yay. Anything that continues to be helpful on this site or that is worth us transferring over, we'll be adding it to the database and the resource pages before we take it down. So we won't lose any of the vital resources that were on there. So if you were to go to the landing page today, there's sections that are set up by sector. So one for horse owners, one for nonprofits, one for equine businesses, and one for equine industry employees. And within these sections or these buckets, we've included links to articles, websites, information, webinars, and anything really that we found would be beneficial to help aid individuals during the pandemic. One of the things that I think we're known for is the vast array of educational materials that we have on our website for our members to utilize, as well as the general public. Most of these documents are available as PDFs, and we do have a limited supply of print materials that are available to our UHC members as well. So please take advantage and use these materials to share with anyone, excuse me, who might benefit from their use. In an effort to save time, I'm looking at the clock here, I will not be going through all these materials, but I do encourage you when you get a chance to check them out on our website, because these materials are for basically everything you wanted to know about being a responsible owner, and they can be extremely useful tools for potential adopters and new horse owners and even current ones as well. We do have infographics that we put out depending on what's currently going on in the industry. And we also have a resource site of books that we have recommended to help owners and rescues. So again, if you think that any of these materials would be useful to you or your organization, please utilize them. And if you're not a UHC member and you find these materials to be useful, please consider becoming a member or making a donation and supporting our ability to keep these materials up on our site. So keeping along with our educational materials, I want to go into some of the materials we have planned for this year. One of those being the UHC Join the Effort booklet, which was slated to get an overhaul in 2020. We'd hoped to have that done by the end of the year, but it did get pushed into 2021. And I can say that we are almost done with that. There's just a few additions to be included before this booklet gets sent to committee for approval. This booklet was originally put together to help industry organizations and individuals institute activities and programs to help at-risk horses and those in transition. It's really a means for us to share collectively what other organizations and individuals are already doing to be able to provide guidance and ideas to other organizations about how they can jump on board and implement these programs as well. One of the other projects we're hoping to collaborate on is the creation of a new owner packet containing some form of the responsible ownership materials we have on our website. Our goal is to have these packets available for distribution anywhere that a horse changes hands. So this could be at adoption facilities, sales barns, breeding barns, and so on. And the purpose is really to try and promote responsible ownership before the horse changes hands so that each owner has the tools in place that they need to make responsible decisions on their horse's behalf. One of the items that we spoke about during our recent committee meetings was the possibility of collaborating with other organizations to create standardized guidelines and best practices to help organizations implement certain types of safety net programs. So this would basically allow us to take tried and true practices that other organizations have established and share them with organizations who don't currently offer these types of programs, but they're interested in doing so in the future. And it's our hope that by increasing these types of programs nationwide, we'll be able to add these programs back into the database and increase access for the owners who are in need of assistance. A few of the guidelines and best practices to standardize that we had in mind are gelding and castration clinics, euthanasia and disposal clinics, hay and feed assistance programs, and training and behavioral assistance programs. So be on the lookout for future developments coming out of this. So in talking about our goals for 2021, our big one this year is going to be a focus on increasing our membership at the full associate and supportive levels. Like many organizations last year, we were not immune to the loss of funding that occurred during the COVID pandemic. And as we, as an organization, rely solely on our membership fees to continue the work we do, it's critical that we increase our membership to ensure the viability of not only UHC, but the valuable resources that we provide to the equine industry as a whole. As some of you may have seen in our recent newsletter, we were able to assist a little over 15,000 requests nationwide for assistance from individual owners and organizations in need through the equine database, the COVID resource site, emails, phone calls since December of last year, with that number basically increasing as more owners become aware of the database's existence. Another thing that we spoke about during our committee meetings this year was the potential for before I get ahead there, the potential for us to be hosting more webinars on educational topics that are important not only for owners, but for our member organizations as well. I'll be taking a look at the UHC member satisfaction survey results that recently went out, and seeing what type of educational webinars that our members would like us to hold, and see if we can get those put together. And then, of course, focusing on the continued expansion of the equine resource database, and helping organizations to create more access to safety net programs nationwide. So to close out my segment of our meeting today, I want to let you know about some of the things that you can do on a personal level to help at-risk horses. The number one important thing is, of course, to look out for the horse in your own backyard and be a responsible owner to your own horses. Having a contingency plan in place for your horse, which including them in your estate planning, and having an exit strategy and a safety plan spelled out in place for your horse if something happens to you. If you breed, I think it goes without saying, breed responsibly and set the horses you breed up for success. If you're an organization, join the UHC Ambassador Program or become a member. And if you're an individual, volunteer at your local rescue or rehoming facility. You know, you can donate, you can hold a fundraiser in their honor. But I think, you know, the easiest way that you can help us and help at-risk horses is to share the UHC materials on responsible ownership with your horse friends and your coworkers. We, meaning collectively, can't help owners if they aren't aware of what exists out there to help them keep their horses safe. If you work in the industry, consider designating one person to spearhead the effort of talking about at-risk horses, and consult the UHC Join the Effort handbook for ideas on how you can help. One simple activity, just to give you an example, is to dedicate a small section of your website to UHC and the resources for owners, so that your own membership base knows that these resources exist for them to access in their time of need. But most importantly, aim to find common ground and work together to prevent horses from becoming at risk. And if you aren't already a member, consider becoming part of the UHC and spread the word about owning responsibly. So that concludes my update. If you guys have any questions, looking at the clock here, in an effort to save time as we have a jam-packed session today, I'll ask that you put them in chat and I would be happy to answer them. Or if you would prefer to ask them privately, you can send me an email at uhc@horsecouncil.org and I'll put that in the chat. And with that, I would like to introduce my colleague, Emily Stearns of the Equine Welfare Data Collective. Just to give you a little background on Emily, she is the program manager of the Equine Data Collective. Emily completed her MSc by research in equine science at the University of Edinburgh, Scotland. She is a self-admitted horse girl and grew up eventing in Massachusetts. Her experience includes various equine research projects, managing large and small horse farms, animal care and adoption counseling at an animal rescue, and teaching as an adjunct professor for the University of New Hampshire Equine Program. In her free time, she enjoys riding, traveling, and hiking with her dogs. Emily is extremely excited to be managing the EWDC and working to bring this vital resource to the public. So Emily, I am going to pull up your slides and you just tell me when you want me to click ahead, okay?
Thanks, Ash. And Julie, did you want to say something first?
Yeah, I just want to say a big shout out to Ashley. If you guys weren't aware, Ashley is a part-time employee. She only works 20 hours a week for us, and she really does an outstanding job and crammed a lot into those hours. And so kudos to her for all she's been able to do. And she's just really tackled a lot of wonderful things. And we're just so pleased to have her as part of our organization. And she's going to be taking a little maternity leave here shortly. So if you don't get a response right away, just allow a little bit of time and she'll get right back with you. She's not going to take a complete leave, she swears to me, but she's going to take a little bit of a breather before baby number 3 comes along. So with that, Emily, kick us off.
And Ashley has promised me she's coming back. Oh, hello everybody, and thanks for joining us this afternoon. We've had a long week of sessions, and it's been a lot of really great information. So kudos to everybody for kind of being able to sit down and absorb some even more info. The Equine Welfare Data Collective, we've been around since 2018. We are a part of the United Horse Coalition. And the mission of the EWDC in particular is to provide data analysis that is critical to understanding more about horses currently at risk in transition. So these are horses that are being helped and assisted through programming services, custodial services, non-custodial services, so that funding and programming and support can be aimed appropriately and that we all can help kind of drive this positive change. And when I tell people, you know, in the 10-second elevator pitch of this is we're basically counting all the organizations that are assisting, we're counting all the horses that are getting assistance, and we're trying to keep track of the types of assistance that are being provided. You can go to the next slide, Ash. So over the past year, we are in our third year. Our accomplishments over this past year is this database that Ashley talked about contains over 1,000 equine welfare organizations. And we audit that fully in tandem with the UHC to make sure that any organization in that database is still a registered nonprofit. And we focus for our research on registered nonprofits because those are organizations that are typically able to receive grant funding, receive donations, and tend to be the focus of really kind of directed programmatic efforts. And we also think of them as kind of the first line of defense. When an owner's in need and they're looking towards someone to help them, they will often kind of look up their local nonprofit or equine rescue. So we are consistently auditing this database so we can keep track of our sample size and what help is available in what regions and where programming is available. Our goal is to always kind of pulling data from about 30% of this equine welfare population. As we'll talk about with our coming report, 2020 definitely put a little hamper on that, but we'll get deeper into that. We currently have 2 published reports. We publish all of our reporting and analysis for free. We want to make sure that this data is open access. We think it's really critical for everybody to be able to access it and pull their own interpretations. You know, your own community is unique to you, so it's important to be able to kind of interpret the data as it's localized to you. And our third report is currently in review. It should be published at the end of next week. It's with the reviewer now, and then it's going to our steering committee for review. So that's really exciting. This third report will encompass all of 2019. So historically, as we kind of got started and started this as a bit of a pilot initiative, our first 2 reports just reported for a 6-month time period. And this report covers all of 2019. And then the next report will cover all of 2020. So there's a lot of information coming in this third report, a lot of stuff to chew on. We also have an ambassador program. And as we've been talking about our own strategic planning, that's going to kind of change and evolve a little bit as we keep growing. And we recently, again, just completed a big kind of strategic plan review. So after our 3-year mark, we took that moment to kind of pause and breathe and see what's working, what different aspects we want to pursue and kind of explore in terms of growing participation and the different data points we want to explore. Over the past year, we took advantage of the fact that everyone is sitting on for online webinars and Zoom and all that good stuff for their educational aspects. And in our first 2 reports, we really identified this need for equine welfare organizations to have access to knowledge about different record keeping options. So we launched a 3-part webinar series that's now posted on our website that encompassed investigating all the different aspects of digital record keeping that might be prudent to organizations that provide custodial services, non-custodial services, even organizations that just need help keeping track of volunteers. Because we feel that this kind of improving record keeping across the welfare community is going to improve data collection and ultimately improve kind of our reporting and the ability to extrapolate and infer ideas from the reporting. And we also have a very robust intern program. So if you know anybody who has students, we have a paid remote internship program. We always kind of constantly have 1 or 2 or 3 interns, depending on how many hours they want to be doing. And we've had a lot of really great positive feedback. It's getting people involved in the industry. They might not be horse people, they might be data or math majors, they might be marketing majors, but have this kind of overall interest in working with an organization that has a mission. So this intern program has been really great in getting people involved. Next slide, Ash. So I always kind of put this slide up and just kind of letting people understand how it works, how we work. We're not doing any kind of invasive data scrubbing or anything like that. When we created the database, Ashley and I sat down and Googled like every welfare organization in the country for several months, documented all of their contact information, contacted them to confirm that they're running. And now that we have that list, what we do is several times a year, the EWDC contacts these organizations. We go through the entire database of about 1,000 orgs, we call them, we email them, and we collect data through Qualtrics, which then gets analyzed and reported and put into our published reports online. We were initially collecting data biannually, so in kind of 6-month aggregate sets. And for 2020, we have graduated to collecting data monthly because we think this will allow us to be more agile in our reporting and track trends a little differently. And also through the data collection and the data reporting, we really keep it all very privatized. So any data sharing is explicitly opt-in, and the data sharing is usually for grant funding purposes. So there's a few grants out there now that require participation with the EWDC to be applicable for the grant. And what's happened now is that we have developed this kind of opt-in data sharing. So the organization can tell us, EWDC, you're allowed to share my most recent data report with the ASPCA, for example. But we really pride ourselves on transparency and protecting the privacy of that data. So any data analyzed is aggregated, identifying information is removed, and we just kind of break it down regionally and statewide and keep everything very private. You know, we take all the contact information and any identifying information out before it's analyzed or sent to our third-party analyst for confirmation. Next slide, Ash. So in the second report, a really exciting data point we were able to come up with, and this is something to keep in mind as we start talking about kind of promoting responsible ownership and how we help owners in need. So there's a daily capacity. We hit the sample size we needed to estimate across the entire nation. There's an estimated daily capacity. So at any one point in time, we can house nearly 50,000 horses in facilities across all of these facilities that provide custodial services. So we can't yet determine annual capacity because that is dependent on how long horses are on average spending in a facility. But for horses in need, this kind of speaks if we can get horses to only be spending, say, 3 months in a facility at a time, that could average out to over 200,000 horses assisted every year in these custodial facilities. And that doesn't take into account the capacity for non-custodial services. So how many horses we can help per year with hay banks, with castration services, with veterinary services. So it's really exciting to be understanding the kind of scope of how equine welfare organizations are assisting horses on a daily basis, because the idea of 50,000 horses a day being able to be cared for in organizations is pretty incredible. Next slide, Ash. So some of this data coming out of our most recent report, and this is, you know, fresh off the press. This is kind of a first look here for you guys. This will be printed up in our third report coming out. We started asking organizations what they felt the most common reasons for owners requesting assistance rehoming their horse. So either surrendering the horse, directly to the organization, or even through direct placement assistance, as multiple different organizations like Thoroughbred Aftercare programs do, where they help trainers directly rehome their horse without taking custody of it. So equine health was an option, equine age, equine behavior, owner relocation, owner finances, owner health, owner age. And the organizations were allowed to pick and choose whatever they felt the top priorities were. And so 68% of all the participating organizations, that's over 178 organizations for this question, 68% said owner finances was a top reason that owners were needing to rehome their animals. 50% said owner health, and 33% said owner age, followed by 24% saying the owner was relocating. And then it kind of follows the equine related reasons. So 34% said equine health was a reason they needed to rehome their horse. 31% said equine age was a reason. 16% said equine behavior was a reason. And then 9% kind of always have that nebulous other, they never quite specify, or they just felt the reasonings didn't fit within this. And what we did is we looked at this and then we generalized it into horse-related reasons and owner-related reasons. And 77% of all organizations that answered this question said owner-related reasons were one of the top things going on, that this is why these horses are coming into our program and needing help. And then 55% said horse-related reasons. So, physical or behavioral aspects of the horse. This is why these horses are coming in. And I think this is a really important data point to be talking about, because as we start talking about responsible ownership, it really is kind of important to be thinking, okay, if 77% of organizations are saying owner-related reasons are a big reason why these horses are coming to us, if we can really get that conversation going about responsible ownership and how owners can get help, that might be able to prevent a lot of these horses from needing to end up getting either surrendered to their local rescue or in kind of whatever situation that might occur if the rescue doesn't end up helping or being able to facilitate assistance. So understanding these data points are kind of really opening up our eyes to how different communities can be assisting the owners in their area. Next slide, Ash. So another thing we're talking about in terms of services provided and how we're helping owners in need is direct placement services. And direct placement services are when an organization facilitates an owner rehoming their horse to a new home, to a new owner, without taking custody of the horse. So traditionally, this might look like thoroughbred aftercare organizations. There's a lot of organizations that facilitate rehoming a thoroughbred after the racetrack without taking custody of it. It might look like full circle programs. So there's a couple of breed associations out there that have what's called full circle programs, where a horse, a registered horse, can have a list of people sign up as kind of a right of first refusal if that horse finds itself ever needing a home. And that way the horse can be rehomed without an organization having to take custody of it. And while this is still kind of a small subset, this is really kind of a pilot data point for us to be collecting. It's pretty impressive that 18 organizations across the country, and this is a variety of organizations, it's not just thoroughbred programs, 18 organizations helped take over 1,000 requests for services in 1 year. And so again, this was not breed specific. So these are organizations all over the country helping all types of horses, and they received over 1,000 requests for services. You can go to the next slide, Ash. And so when we're thinking, okay, direct placement, as well as traditional custodial services, how are horses ending up in shelters, and how is that changing over time? So one thing the EWDC is really starting to do now that we have multiple years of data is we're going to start tracking these separate data points over time to see how they're changing. So in 2018, comparative to 2019, we were looking at percentages of intakes in shelters. So when a horse comes into a shelter, how it ended up there. Was it an owner surrender? Was it confiscated by law enforcement? And kind of all the different ways that a horse can end up in a custodial shelter. So in 2018, under 50% of horses were coming into shelters as an owner surrender. And in 2019, with the reporting organizations, we have just over 50% of horses coming into shelters, coming in through owner surrender. And we don't have enough data to say if this is, vastly different, if there's any reason, and kind of the shift of demographics, what even the average demographic will look like. This is something that will kind of start to appear over time as we have a longer time frame of data. But it's interesting to start kind of watching how this is going to change. And so the percent of horses going into shelters being surrendered went up from 2018 to 2019, but the number of horses being confiscated by law enforcement and ending up in shelters stayed really relatively the same. So other scenarios horses might find themselves in shelters are they might be stray, and that's kind of a funny thing to think about, especially in New England. We don't see a lot of stray horses wandering around, but there's organizations, for example, the Heart of Phoenix in West Virginia, where they're taking the feral mine horses, and those horses really are stray horses kind of coming in off the land that they're then rehoming. We also have horses that are born in the shelter. As Stacy will talk about next in her presentation, sometimes at-risk horses. I've always, and Ashley will say this too, you have a mare come into a shelter, you kind of just always operate under the assumption that she's pregnant until you learn otherwise. So very common for horses to be born in shelters. And then we also have horses being purchased by auction through rescue and horses being purchased from kill pen by rescue. And that tends to be kind of the top 4 or 5 reasons horses are ending up. But the owner surrender across the board is always the #1 reason horses are coming into shelters. So again, this conversation of responsible ownership is really critical, because how can we help owners so they don't have to surrender their horse? It's really important to focus on options available to owners so it doesn't have to get to that point. Next slide, Ash. So the last question, I'm looking at the clock hitting my 20 minutes, I think. So why is it important to keep collecting this data, and why do we really, when we go to the summits and the conferences and the interns on the phone calls, they're always very polite to the interns, but you can tell they're tired of us calling. Why is it important that we keep calling these organizations to get this data? And one is tracking changing needs within the community. So as we start to build and develop robust programs to help owners, to help welfare organizations, to help horses at risk in general, the needs of the community might change over time. So as some programs become successful, then we might need to focus on other aspects of the population. And we won't know that until we can start to see kind of the effects of programming in general. We also need to be able to identify capacity of assistance programs. So in the 3rd report that we have that's coming out, a new data point that we're tracking is not just the services being provided, but the amount of requests for services. So what is the need in the community, and how is that being fulfilled? Where do we need to help more? Where do grant funders need direct funding to promote capacity or build capacity? And then also understanding how programs not only can best address owner need, but the programs that are addressing owner need and how they're successful. And like I just kind of mentioned briefly, funders directing grants, they really need this data to be able to understand what grants are going to be effective and how best to direct that money. And the overall goal is to support the welfare community and the owners they need, the owners in need in their community. So really kind of following the data is very beneficial to directing kind of any external grant funding programs. That's my kind of spiel for the day. If anybody has any questions or would like to know more about the upcoming report, it will be posted on our website once it's officially published. And you can always email me. I believe Ashley put it in the chat, but ewdc@horsecouncil.org. I work full time, so I'm always kind of try to be very responsive on the email if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, so we're gonna take a quick 10-minute break. So I'd like to see everyone back here at 2 o'clock before we move on to our next speaker. If more for my benefit than anyone else's. So see you back here at 2.
At WF Young, there's a commitment to providing products to help our animals live longer and healthier lives. We work very closely together with one another to put forth the best quality products and brands and to earn the trust of our customers every single day.
I think people have been loyal to Absorbine and WF Young because of that 125 years of putting out the best that we can put out.
People have grown up with these products, they know they work, and they know that when they pick something up that says Absorbine on it, it's going to do right by their animal.